Hey, my friends, you're going to enjoy this episode. I just interviewed Dennis Watkins, and he's such an interesting guy. First of all, he's the kind of guy that is just easy to be with. I met him at a conference, didn't really know him that well, but we hung out a ton, and turns out, you know those people where you meet them and it feels like you've been friends a really long time? I feel that way about Dennis. He's just one of the world's nicest guys. But also, he's wildly successful in his chosen field. And so he's a magician and he runs a very fancy show. He's going to tell you about that. If you're not a magician, I dare you to stay tuned because this is not about magic. If you have ever been to a show or you ever plan to go to a show, or if you happen to be in that small percentage of people who does shows, you're going to love this conversation because, among other things, we talk about what makes a show good. Why do some shows work and why do some shows not? It's kind of fun. And we disagreed a little bit, which I think is kind of fun too. One of the reasons I liked Dennis so much at this conference, and I'm so bonded to him right now, and one of the reasons I think you're going to love him in this podcast, is the guy has every reason to be snobby and braggy. He's just super accomplished. But that is not what he's all about. He's just one of the world's nicest guys. You would never know when you're hanging out with him that this guy is as famous as he is, as successful as he is. So I know you're going to enjoy meeting him as much as I have, and I know you're going to love this interview. Everybody, I'm glad you're here. Before I bring up Dennis Watkins, hit like and subscribe, would you? I love your emails. Keep those coming. But don't forget to use social media too, because that helps me get the word out. Put a review on Apple for me. That really makes a great difference. And I appreciate you more than you might guess. Stay tuned for a really fun conversation with Dennis. Hey, my friends, it's Brad. I've missed you. Well, it's a good day, and I'll tell you why it's a good day, because we have a really interesting guest. This is a guy you are going to grow to love as much as I do. And I got lucky because recently we were at a conference together in Las Vegas, and we just hung out a ton. And I'm not, I'm not sure what he's going to say, but I thought he was pretty awesome. Please welcome to your screen. We got Dennis Watkins. What's up, buddy?
Not much. For the record, I think you were awesome also. So we're in a good place to start.
That is, because that's really awkward because you're like, actually, Brad, I thought you were an asshole.
I wouldn't say that on this, like, not while we're recording.
All right, well, we need to give him a little bit of background about you. You are one of the, you're famous. You've got your own theater in a really fancy hotel in downtown Chicago. You've been running it for, I think, a decade or more, something like thousands and thousands of shows. Tell us about Dennis.
10 years. You bet. So my show is called The Magic Parlor. And it runs 5 shows weekly at the Palmer House Hotel in the middle of downtown Chicago. The Palmer House is one of Chicago's great historic hotels. It is celebrating, actually this year, it's celebrating 150 years of continuous operation, which for a historic hotel in North America is a pretty long stretch.
Yeah.
It's a big, glorious hotel in Chicago. It was built right before the Great Chicago Fire, actually. It opened for the first time, and then a couple weeks later it burned down. And then they rebuilt it. Potter Palmer built this hotel as a gift to his wife, Bertha, which makes us all rethink how we do our gift giving to people we love. It's a big, glorious hotel, and I've been lucky enough to be running my show in there since New Year's Eve of 2011.
Over a decade.
Over a decade, a little over a decade.
Are we counting COVID in that?
I am counting COVID in that because technically we opened the Magic Parlor at a small theater in Wicker Park in downtown Chicago 2 years prior. So in 2009, we had 2 years of running, and then 8 years of COVID, and then 2 years, and now. So I count it. I think it's fine to say over a decade because it has been. But also during the pandemic, I ran a virtual show called The Magic Parlor at Home every Friday and Saturday night. And while we were not able to be broadcasting it from the Palmer House, we kept the show running in the form that we were able to during the pandemic.
Well, it's a really big deal. So magicians around the country like me look at you and your theater and go, oh, like personally, Dennis, I'm a little too bitter and jealous to be happy for you. I
Well,
don't know.
that's
Just
fine. We all have that side, Brad.
all right. One of the things I wanted to talk about is the flavor of entertainment now, and if there's anything to be salvaged from past flavors of entertainment. And allow me to explain. I was talking to a fellow motivational speaker, and we were talking about how he saw Elton John in Vegas. And Elton John did a show, and you would think it's Elton John, maybe with a band, maybe just at a piano, singing Elton John songs. But my friend was stunned that there were video screens playing movies that seemed to him to be completely unrelated to whatever Elton John was doing. And there were dancers all up and down the wings. And of course, there was a band and a tremendous light show and occasional pyrotechnics. And my friend thought, oh, is this like the death for old school entertainment where you have a person on stage that basically says, watch me and we're going to have fun? I think your show is a little old school in that you are not doing the pyrotechnics and you're not doing the big video screens. Can you talk to us about this?
Absolutely, I can. And you're right. My show is not that way. It's interesting. I'm going to Las Vegas to work a trade show next week. And the first night I'm there, I bought a ticket to see Chris Angel's show because from what I know of it, and I've never seen Chris's show, but from what I understand, it is the complete opposite of my show, right? My dear friend Benjamin Barnes was telling me the first 20 minutes of that show is absolutely unbelievable in terms of its spectacle and scale. And it's right in line with what you would picture from Chris Angel at this point. And it's right in line with what you've described as the Elton John concert and the way that I think we tend to consume entertainment. But my show is very different. My show is an old school show, and it's old school in that I have a taste when it comes to magic in the classics, right? I really do. I'm a third generation magician, and my granddad ran a magic shop starting right after World War II. And so my taste and my education and my training in magic is very old school. It's the work that I love, and it's the material that I love, and it's the material I choose to perform. But even beyond that, I think that when it comes to performing magic, my granddad used to tell me this art comes down to one moment. It is a moment of shared revelation. Imagine that we are performing this, the classic sponge. Let's do the sponge balls. The classic sponge balls, right? I take a sponge ball, I put it in the palm of my hand, I pick up another one, and I ask you to hold it in the palm of your hand, and you close your hand around it. And I open my hand. When I open my hand is empty. You open yours, and there are two balls there, not one. And there's a moment that I see on your face that you are experiencing something. There's a revelation that you have when you open your hand and you see two balls there. There's a revelation that I have when I watch you do that you're experiencing exactly what I wanted you to. And your revelation is, oh my gosh, there's two, not one. And we have a moment of shared revelation. That is the moment of magic. That's it, right? It's that moment.
Yeah.
A moment of shared revelation between you, me, and whoever else is in the room. And that, when it comes to performing magic, in my mind, is the gold. There are lots of ways to amplify that gold, and I believe in all the storytelling tools that we have at our disposal to do that. And when I was younger, in my younger life as both a magician and a theater artist, a storyteller, most of the work that I did was over the top, massive spectacle, choruses of performers. I did 9 runs of this show called Death and Harry Houdini at different theaters in the country, and that's a show wherein we tell the story of Harry Houdini. And I played Harry, and there was walking on broken glass, and a thin model sawing, and a levitation, and a cabaret illusion, and people were appearing and disappearing, and I was dunked in a water torture cell, and it was big, and it was over the top, and it was huge. And it was the first show that a company that I started produced right out of college, and that was my taste in storytelling, right? I still love those things, but as I've gotten to be an older magician, or a more experienced magician, I've sort of moved my focus from a place where what I thought we had to do was louder, faster, funnier, keep you engaged from the moment you walk in to the moment you walk out by throwing a lot at you, right? We watch lots of movies, lots of TV, we see things. The stories that we consume are largely visual, and they're big, right?
Right, and like TV is a great example because editing styles have changed. right? The
Right.
pace of camera cuts are crazy
They're
fast compared
fast.
to even 10 years
That's
ago.
right. They're furious, and we think that that's what we need. But I think that as magicians, we do ourselves a disservice by trying to tell too many stories at one time and trying to tell too many stories in too many ways. Um, I love all kinds of theatrical storytelling, but when it comes to Shakespeare, and my education, my college education is in classic theater. So when it comes to Shakespeare, um, there's a great Richard III that's set in like World War II, right? And so you've got Nazi Richard III running around yelling at my kingdom for a horse and all this kind of nonsense, right? But what the directors do when they're telling that story is they take the incredibly human story of Richard III, which is a big, broad story, and then they decided that you, Brad, probably wouldn't stick with that story unless we set it in Nazi Germany, because that would be a little bit more relevant to you than Elizabethan England. So we're going to set it in Nazi Germany, so that you can tap into the themes of Nazism and genocide, and that'll make the story more powerful, right? I would argue that any director who decides that that's the story they want to tell should be telling that story instead of Shakespeare's story, because Shakespeare is probably a better storyteller, right? And that what Shakespeare honed in on Richard III is the really human part of the story. And all we need to focus on to tell the story of Richard III is the human part of the story. We don't need tanks. We don't need bombs falling from the sky. We need Richard, the poetry, and a stage. And that's what we need. And we can go further if we're not distracted by bombs falling from the sky and Nazis that weren't there, and all kinds of nonsense. And I think that the same thing is true in theater. Or in magic. I love creative ways of performing magic. I love Siegfried and Roy. I love
Who, by the
David
way,
Copperfield's
if you
work.
haven't seen Siegfried and Roy, they had all that crazy stuff. There was a million things happening with them.
Right? It was wild. Uh, but Eugene Berger, when he started coming to my show, The Magic Parlor, right when it opened,
And
and he's a
Tell us who Eugene Berger is.
Eugene Berger. For those who don't, well, I mean, Eugene Berger is Dumbledore. Right down to the big white beard. Eugene, of course, is one of the greatest close-up magicians of our time, and he passed away a short handful of years ago. He was a Chicagoan, and um, I was lucky enough to land in Chicago, where I would have the opportunity to get to know Eugene, and Eugene would be able to work with me and guide me in shaping the Magic Parlor into the show that it is today. And when Eugene started coming to the show, and when he started working with me on this show, I was also performing some of those big Houdini style shows and big stuff, and a lot of my money was coming from corporate events that I was learning how to work. I don't work them the same way I did back then, but back then my general philosophy was, if I step onto a ballroom stage in a hotel and there's 400 people in that ballroom, that there was a committee of 5 that put together the party. 3 of those 5 voted for magician, and maybe 2 of those 3 voted for me. So there's 2 people in the room that care that I'm there, right? So the goal is to hook them from the beginning and to keep them for the full 40 minutes without letting them have space to go, do I need another drink? You don't want to do that. You want to keep it fast and loud and funny and moving. And that was the way that I attacked building the Magic Parlor, which was a 90-minute experience for which people paid just shy of $100 for their ticket. The truth is, as Eugene made clear, people have already decided to see you, Dennis. You don't have to sell them on your show for the first 40 minutes. They're there. And so that relief was big, but what it let me do is breathe and slow down and pace the show and discover that we distract the audiences from magic by putting a whole bunch of crap around it. I love
Well,
comedy magic. I'm not a terribly funny entertainer. There's a lot of funny in the show, and that funny comes from the audience and the situations and the things that people bring to the show every day. It's funny, but I'm not a comedy magician, because what I want to focus on is building the moment of wonder, the moment of joy, and the moment of mystery. That's a lot to do. I don't, Pyrotechnics are distracting.
well,
You've got a lot to do
are
when
you
you
doing
create magic.
it's I haven't seen your show yet, which by the way I'm going to remedy. It helped, by the way, if you were in my state. But are
It
you
was.
doing anything with music and lights or even the most basic level of production?
Yeah, there is, of course, there's a basic level of production because I think that there are tools that really help us move into an imaginative space. Um, the biggest tools that I use are scripting. I script everything. It doesn't feel like it's scripted necessarily when I'm performing it, but everything is very carefully scripted down to the commas. But um, scripting is a big one. In terms of lights in my space, I don't use the lights. I mean, we have lights on, but I don't use lights to focus the attention of the room. I use sound. I do use a soundtrack to the show. It's very carefully scored with jazz. But outside of that, you walk into our ballroom at the Palmer House, and it's a lovely ballroom in a beautiful historic hotel. That hotel is very much a character in my show, and we walk in, and the lights are even across the room. And today, I'm able to articulate a storytelling reason for that. When we moved in to the hotel, it was because we wanted to be low maintenance and I didn't want to ask for anything from the hotel, and because the Palmer House is a union hotel, and if I start hanging lights every Friday and Saturday night, I've got to hire union people to be there the whole time,
Uh,
and it's just a nightmare. But today, I actually understand that um, what we have in that room in the Palmer House is what Peter Brook would call the empty space. And Peter Brook he wrote a book called The Empty Space. He's a theater artist, and as a theater student, it's a book that we read, which is. And he talks about the empty space as being the space where the story happens. It's the space that you and I enter. We sit down in a room and we go. All we need, Brad, is the room. We need the room. We need you. We need me, and we need our imaginations. And if we have those things, then we can create something really stellar. It's not that the other tools, the bigger, brighter, wilder tools, don't help us tell the story. It's not that they don't help us make it more magical. They do, and they can. But I think there's something really pure that happens when you and I share a moment of shared revelation, and there's nothing else there that you can either blame the magic on. Ah, that was a lighting trick. I was distracted by that sound cue. I looked
right.
the other way when somebody stepped on stage. Um, when you're not distracted by those things, and you can say there was literally nothing there but me, Dennis, and my thought, and then you can create something magic, something that's not distracting, something that doesn't feel like you could have watched it on TV, something that's not going to look cooler with CGI when you watch it in an episode of Stranger Things, but something that happened just because you were there, because I was there, and that's all we really need to make magic. And
Well,
truthfully, I really believe that that's a powerful way to do it. That the I have a friend who shall remain nameless, who believes that every time I show him a piece of magic, he's like, "Well, that's a straightforward piece of magic. Where's the hook? Where's the gimmick? Where's the?" And by gimmick, I don't mean the piece of the apparatus that makes the magic happen. I mean, what's the frame that you're going to build around this piece of magic to engage the audience? It really, what it should be is it should be a story about when you were on an airplane for the first time and blah 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 blah. It's like, well, I think it should be about the experience that Brad has when he opens his hands and sees that there are two
right.
SpongeBobs in there instead of one. That's what I'm focused on. That's what I want to happen. And in order to make that happen, we really need some chairs, enough light for you to see, and we need to share space.
Well, it's such a this topic is so interesting to me because I'm dealing it with myself. I'm going to those boardrooms, right? I'm going to the banquet room at the Marriott in Indianapolis or whatever.
Uh
And
huh.
so whatever technology is there, aside from lights, general lighting, and a microphone, everything's up to me. And I've
Right.
really been pushing the envelope using the computer with sound and like an interesting use of PowerPoint to add more production value. And if, in my first choice, I'd have cool lighting, like a spotlight on me, and then the general wash. That is not possible because of where I work.
Right.
But I feel like that adds to it and doesn't take away to it because, and partly because it's so different. Conferences, they've been sitting through 3 days of conferences, and it's just this. Um, the stage does not change literally from speaker to speaker, and if I can change it, that's good.
Right.
So,
Sure.
are we talking about the difference between people going to a theater where they paid money versus what you described earlier, which is my life too? The audience didn't pick me. a buyer picked me.
I
Is
mean,
it
I think there is a difference. Yes, I do think there's a difference. There's an opt-in difference, right? And we all know that as, and I say we all, but I mean people like you and me who step into hotel ballrooms for company X on a big stage, and we do things for people after they've finished their dinner, and we make them feel great, and we do all the things, right? But we step into those rooms, and you're right, I have very little control over what the Marriott ballroom is, nor do I have any control over how many of those people would have chosen a magic show for their night's entertainment if they were given a choice that was not laid out for them in an agenda, right? So you have those um, big differences in buy-in from the audience at these big conventions and corporate events versus someone actually decided, you know what I want to do is I want to take my wife out for our 50th anniversary, and this unique, intimate boutique magic show for 40 people is the thing that I think is going to do it. And so I researched it and I chose it, and I decided to spend $120 on our tickets, on each of our tickets, and to buy dinner before or after. And this thing, and I'm excited about the entertainment that I've selected for myself and for my wife on this night of our
right? But
anniversary,
I'm
right?
curious if that calculus changes how the show has to be run. Like, are
A
you
little bit, but not as much as I used to think.
okay?
Not as much as I used to think. I think that as my work as a magician in the magic parlor with the help of Eugene and some other storytellers, as that work slowed and the focus moved from louder, faster, funnier, bigger to as magical as it could possibly be, as simple and straightforward and magical as it can be. As my work in the magic parlor moved from one place to another, so did my work in the corporate realm. My work in the corporate realm is slower. I talk a lot, and I don't mean to say that I'm some sort of talking head, but it's a verbal show, and it's slower than it used to be. Again, boom, 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 boom. So here's an interesting example. There's a piece of magic that I love that I used to perform in every show because I thought in order to close my show, I should close with a bang. It
Right.
has to close with a bang. It has to close big and strong and loud.
Yeah, it's like a
And so,
open big, close big.
that's right. That's right. So I was doing this corporate event for BRP International. They build like Sea-Doos and ATVs and nonsense. And it was in DC, and there were 1,500 people. And this was early in my corporate career. And I don't know why I was able to convince BRP to hire me, but I did. I don't know. It was probably a poor choice because, I'm used to performing on much smaller stages than 1,500 at that point in my career. Today is different, but then it was. And I was like, okay, so I'm a sleight of hand guy and a mentalist, and I need something that's going to play really big. And I saw a friend of mine, I went to a friend of mine for Thanksgiving dinner, and they showed some videos of their kids in high school variety shows. And one kid had like taken one of those giant balloons and blown it up 7 feet with a leaf blower and crawled inside of it,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And bounced around on the stage. It was just
I love
hilarious. And I
that.
was like, yeah, there's going to be a card trick. I'm going to turn that into a card trick, is what I thought. And that way I can do a card trick for 1,500 people, and it's going to play big and be loud and funny and hilarious. And
Right.
so what I did was I would have someone take a card and sign it, and then I'd give them the deck and have them shuffle it into the deck and hold onto the cards. I'd take a balloon and a leaf blower, and I'd crawl inside of it, flip it around, stick my head out so that you've got my head in a giant 7-foot balloon. And I would have the volunteer stand across the stage from me, take the deck of cards and throw them at me. And I would stab a knife through the balloon, pop the balloon, and catch the card on the knife. It was a card stab, right?
Yeah.
Nothing revolutionary about that plot in magic. But if you throw in a butterfly knife, a leaf blower, and a 7-foot balloon, you can play to 1,500 people. Ha ha! Brilliant.
Sounds
Louder,
good.
faster, funnier, bigger. In no way is it more magical than a traditional card stab. It's not. But it fills 12 minutes, and it's big and it's wild and it's crazy, and it closes the show with a bang. And for the first several years of the Magic Parlor, I closed the show with that piece, even though Eugene was telling me, hey, that one doesn't belong. And I think that piece distracts you from being the magician that you want to be. That piece makes you a big, wild, crazy carnival performer, not a magician. So whatever. I didn't believe that I had another 10 minutes that was worthy of closing the show, and B, something else that could, let's pretend the first 82 minutes or the first 72 minutes of the show is a complete disaster. How can I get everyone on my side with this big, beautiful, endearing, funny, loud, fast-paced card stab thing? And it worked, man. It was gold. It was science. Like, it worked like science every time. If I didn't have the audience, you pull out a 7-foot balloon. You got him. You
Right.
got him. And it would close the show literally with a bang every time. That balloon pops, cards fly everywhere, and there's a beautiful picture and punchline, and it's their card with their name on it. And it's great, right? But frankly, it's not magical. First of all, it's a feat of physical skill. You're catching a card on a knife. It's not actually magic, but it's something cool that I can do because I can practice. If the audience goes as far enough to believe that the magician in you is not doing something sneaky, but is actually skilled enough to catch a card on a knife, what they're applauding for you there is your creativity and your skill. But what they are not standing up and clapping for at the end of the show is a change in themselves. There's been no catharsis. There's been no magical catharsis. There has been catharsis. You scream. You're waiting for that balloon to pop from the moment you start blowing it up. And so we get that catharsis when it pops, but it's not a magical catharsis. It's not a catharsis of wonder and joy. It's a catharsis of oh, wow, that was a big loud noise and it surprised me. The catharsis we want is one that comes from mystery and magic and wonder. So I threw the balloon piece out. And I closed the show with the smallest, most intimate piece of magic that I could think of now. And you know what? It's magical. It's not big and wild and crazy, but it is absolutely mind-boggling to the audience, and it puts an audience member at the center of the action instead of me at the center of the action, and something really magical happens. It's small, it's soft, it happens center stage, and
Yeah.
everybody has to stand up and look at the table to see it instead of a 7-foot balloon exploding and sending cards everywhere. And that is like the journey of the magic parlor distilled to one piece, the
Right.
balloon piece.
I
Then
love
they're going
that
to start it
story.
now.
I was recently at a show with a comedian and a magician, and we were at the intermission, and there were these teenager, like high school age kids, and they came out into the lobby and instantly on video. So we were watching over their shoulders. They're playing games on their phone, and we were going, they are literally at an entertainment venue that's not entertaining enough for them.
Right, right.
But so that kind of goes through my mind, and then I love the fact that you're like, I'm going to face this on. Like, come with me. I got a plan. Stay curious. You will be rewarded, but we're not going to go frenetic. We're not going to go for 8 punchlines per minute. We're just going to go on a journey. I love that. Good for you. And you're
It's interesting.
obviously it's working.
It's working. I think it's working. I mean, who the heck knows, really, Brad? Right? We live in a weird time, but I think it's working. In that I can see and feel it in the audience, and sometimes, it's really interesting. Chicago is a beautiful place for magic. There's a lot of magic happening in Chicago. When I opened the Magic Parlor in 2011, there was one other ongoing magic show. It happened once a month, every third Wednesday. And now in Chicago, there are magic shows all over the place. And I'm not saying that happened since I started running my show because of my show. It didn't. It happened because magic is exciting to people right now. But there's something interesting happening in Chicago in that lots of magic shows are opening all the time, and lots of magic theaters are opening all the time. And the Chicago Magic Lounge is one of my favorite places in the world. I absolutely love it. It's big, it's beautiful, it's an Art Deco magic theater. And I tell you what, when it opened, Brad, I thought, oh my God, I'm doomed. I can't compete with those with a multi-million-dollar, multi-stage magic theater in my city. It's not going to happen. I'm a little bitty close-up show with 44 seats at a time. And truthfully, it does not kill us. It helps us because we're telling people that they can buy tickets to magic shows, and that's going to be awesome. But also because my show is very different from what they offer. You'll go there and you're going to see 6 different magicians perform over the course of 2 hours. This is contrary to the way that I think about deep storytelling. It doesn't mean that they can't accomplish deep storytelling in their mold. What they do is great. I can only talk about what I do and how it works for me. But for me, there's a deep storytelling that comes with an empty space, you, me, and your imagination, that doesn't require lights and sound cues and a whole bunch of cocktails to get you ready for the magic. It doesn't. These things are not required. And I watch these magic shows opening up all over the city, and every now and then I think, you know what I should do? I should get like live jazz musicians to play with me, because that's the way I can compete with what's happening at the Magic Lounge, is that
Mm,
I can build it out and I can have this live band, and what they can do is they can play pre-show and they can score the show instead of my recorded music, and that'll amp up the spectacle of the thing and blah 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 blah. But no, no, because what it does is it pulls us out of that moment of magic. And in fact, you know what? One of the most successful things we did with the Magic Parlor in the last several years is that we launched an encore room after each performance, an encore performance for people who want to pay more money. Because Brad, I think if someone wants to pay more money, we should let them pay more money.
yeah.
But
Well, you want to see a card trick? Well, do you have your wallet?
that's right. That's right. Um, And what we did was, we have this room where we seat only 44 people, right? And after the show, we're going to take 12 of those people, the 12 people who bought the extra ticket, and we're going to move them to a smaller room. We're all going to sit around one table, and we're going to do more magic. We moved from one room with no spectacle and lights to a smaller room with no spectacle and lights. And you know what? People are clamoring to get that ticket to that extra show after the show, because what we've done is we spent 85 minutes together turning on our imaginations, letting them work together in ways that we
Right.
don't get to let them work. We don't let it be that pure. And then we find something that's really pure, and we like, actually, I would like another 25 minutes of that. Thank you very much. Please move me to the other table, sit me there with no lights and sound and music, and let me see what happens. And they do it. And it's sort of the opposite. It's the same thing as the balloon trick, right? It's like you're going to take that thing that closes out big and loud, and you're going to like scrap it for something that's smaller and more intimate and more magical
Yeah.
and speaks more to the people's hearts. And that's what we're going to do. And hopefully that experience at the end of the day
Yeah.
carries enough weight for people to decide to pay $120 for my magic show ticket instead of 55 for the one that has multiple stages, multiple performers, and all that kind of nonsense. And it's because the
This
experience is different.
conversation, Dennis, makes me happy.
It makes me happy too.
But
At least it makes me feel like I can justify my choices. I don't.
right. Well, the reason I don't add production really is because I didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
right.
not what we're hearing at all. It's funny because like my mind is so parallel to yours. I've been in my mind. I've thought off and on for years. What would happen if I traveled with a jazz trio? How cool would that be, as opposed to my pre-recorded stuff? But
First of all, it would.
also, I think in my case and in yours, clearly there's a call for like I want to be with that person in the way that that person has structured and developed. And if the content is good, I'm there. I just but what we really want, I'm assuming, Dennis, the reason those people want to pay for an extra 25 minutes is not to see more magic, it's to see more Dennis.
Maybe, but I'm not that compelling of a human, right?
I'll say.
We spent a lot of time together, Brad. I think you learned that. But I actually I think they might think that, right? I think that the audience might think that when they leave, that wow. Um, and certainly, frankly, at the end of the day, what I'm selling is quote unquote me. It's not really me. I'm a very introverted person, and I don't uh, um, find standing in front of groups of people to be like the most enjoyable time. It's work for me, and it's my job, and I like it, and I love doing it. But it's naturally a little bit against my rhythm. And but I do think that after we spend 85 minutes together, you leave and you feel like you know me, and that is rewarding. But really, what I think you're there for, Brad, what I think, I'm not sure it's what gets you in the door. I think what gets you in the door is the idea that you're paying $125 to see this master magician who's going to show you crap that you can't possibly believe, right? That's what gets you in the door. What makes you come back, or what makes you then decide, you know what, every time I have out of town guests, I'm bringing them to see Dennis at the Magic Parlor, is not my award winning personality. It's the catharsis, it's the magical catharsis that you experience over and over throughout 85 minutes of your time. And the fact that that is so far removed from what you experience in your daily life, unfortunately,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, I think you're the bomb. I think you're wrong. I I just can't imagine when your audience leaves, the main topic of conversation is anything other than I had so much fun. I love that guy. Because there are a lot of magicians who could do the same magic and fool them just as badly, that they would not want to sit through 90 minutes and they wouldn't want to go for an extra show and they wouldn't bring their friends back.
Sure,
I
I hear
think
that.
what makes this unique is not the magic. So that must be you.
Okay. So now that's interesting. So I think that might be true. Like, what makes us unique is not the magic, right? I mean, we've got like Tarbell's Complete Course of Magic sitting right over here, and you can craft an 85-minute show right out of those 8 volumes that would like knock people's socks off and create some real magic in their minds. And maybe they won't watch every performer do that. They wouldn't. I don't think that audience would have watched me do the show that I do 10 years ago. If I was given this script and this material 10 years ago and tried to do it, I wouldn't have. No one would watch that nonsense. People watch it because 10 years later, I can afford to slow down the show and focus only on the magic of it, because I've done 400 shows a year for 10 years, and we've learned how to like get that connection with the audience.
Yeah.
That frankly, I could probably change all of the words of the show and lean only on the 400 shows a year for 10 years that lets us learn how to connect with people and just connect with people. Like, that's the thing, right? Um,
That word is where you are. It's the connection. I felt connected to that guy at the parlor, the Magic Parlor Chicago.com. See what I did there? That's what it is. You could take a reasonably good magician and coach her, and make the show very good, and it wouldn't those people wouldn't be bringing their out of town guests back to see that replacement, because the magic is not the show or the tricks. Oh, Dennis, I lost your audio. Well, through the magic of editing, we're going to be able to fix this. Yep, he's leaving. Check. 35 minutes. Ah,
I think you can hear me now. Can you hear
I
me now?
can hear you now.
Okay, great. Um, Sorry about that. I had a battery issue. I thought those were charged. What were we saying?
I was saying that the word is connection. I think
Yeah.
let's make this editable. Dennis, I think the word you use that's so important is connection. And undoubtedly, your magic is world class, and undoubtedly, your experience has made you one of the greats of the world. Given, but really what makes you special is all of those things surround that, the connection and the all those things that are only Dennis. It's you.
I hear that, but I think I believe what you're saying, and I like to feel special. But I think more than that, it is where we focus the room, right? And it's kind of it's a little bit bogus. It's like, I think it's a little bit manipulative actually, because I
Dennis,
walk out.
hold on. Check your mic for me. You're rubbing up against your shirt. The head is. There you go.
It fell.
Hold on. Let me take another note. We're starting this section again.
Oh man, this is why I wanted to use that boom mic.
Do you have a Rode? What do you have?
I have a Yeti Blue, but the arm, I tried to pack it into my road kit and I broke the arm.
Ah,
So now it can't hang anymore. So now I have to get. I just ordered a thing, but whatever. It's dumb.
all right. I'm going to start that up again. That one section again. Dennis, I think what makes you special and what pulls people back to your show again and again is not your world class magic and it's not your experience that has made you one of the greats in the world. It's they want to see Dennis. You have been able to insert your personality into that show in a way that is uniquely you, and that's what they love most.
I mean, I think you're right. I mean, there is a lot of my personality in the show, and I do like to feel like I'm special enough to keep audiences coming back. But I think that the thing that we really create. So okay, so surprisingly, during virtual shows in the pandemic, uh, made me understand what we do again as magicians, or understand that there's a service that we
Ooh,
offer that's real.
do tell.
And so I mentioned a minute ago, I'm I'm a I'm a workaholic. I love my job. I love working. I love magic, and I love sharing it. And I do somewhere around 400 shows every year. And this is something that feels different today than it did when I was in my 30s, and feels different today being a dad than it did when I was unencumbered. And I say unencumbered, not pejorative. I love. I'm happy to be encumbered. It's the best thing in my life. But when I was working, when the work had different reasons. Before we gave my team medical insurance and 401ks and all that kind of crap, and suddenly the work had a bigger purpose than working to make me artistically happy. It was so that my team could like be putting money away for their own retirement and something. That's one of the reasons that we work now, that we offer those things, right? It's different, and it's easy to be burned out. 400
Yeah.
shows a year is a lot. Being on the road is a lot. Doing, on Saturdays here in Chicago, we do 3 performances of the Magic Parlor and 3 encore performances all in one day. So we do 6 shows back to back to back in the course of 10 hours. So
I didn't know that. That's
it's
amazing.
yeah, we do it 4 times on Fridays. So like it's those 2 days, they just kick your butt. And by the time the pandemic hit and we had to shut everything down, I was in a place of real burnout. And I watch audiences every day come in and sit down in rooms full of strangers and connect and find magical moments. But it became, I don't know, it just became so pedestrian. It happened every day and we were doing it, and it was boring and I was burned out. And in the pandemic, we all shut down. We all stayed in our houses. We didn't go anywhere, and we didn't see new people, and we didn't see old people. We didn't see the people that we knew and we loved that kept us feeling like human beings, right? And we started to feel, frankly, not like human beings. We were sitting here looking at Zoom screens all day long or on the phone and afraid to go out and hug people. And when we launched this Magic Parlor at Home virtual show, I was like, this is never going to work. First of all, but also, what's the draw?
Right.
Right? Why aren't we just go on YouTube? You can watch Sleight of Hand on YouTube, and it's going to be better. You can watch any number of magic shows on Netflix. Like, why? What is the draw for this thing? And I learned what it was that when people were logging in, we were sending our mailing list. Hey, we're doing this virtual show. Come in for joy and wonder. And we weren't making any money off of it. Basically, we were just trying to keep people engaged throughout the course of what we thought would be a 6-month pandemic. Wrong. But uh, we were trying to keep people engaged, and then what we would see is that Brad would log in from Colorado, and he would see his kid in Boston,
Oh.
and they would share something together that they couldn't share at that moment because they couldn't find a way to be together,
Mm.
right? And I got to watch Brad watch his kid, because I can see the Zoom gallery. Not everybody else can just see his kid, but I got to watch Brad watch his kid experience something really human, which is wonder,
Wow.
right? And I saw that there was a shared revelation happening between me and Brad's kid, but also with Brad. And I realized again that one of the things that makes Peter Brook's Empty Space work is that you're making space for community, and that virtual or no, these magic shows are building space for community between people,
Yeah.
with the trappings of card tricks around it, right? So that's all we do. That is the service we offer. We offer you the opportunity to be in a community experience of childlike wonder. That's it. Um,
Well, let me stop you there because I learned something in the pandemic too, and the beginning of the story is exactly the same. Suddenly, I'm doing what I normally did live through a camera, and I, like you said, this will never be any good. And why are they watching me when Brene Brown is on Netflix? What is the problem? And then 2.5 years later, I can tell you that for me, it wasn't the community of them interacting with the gallery. It was me finally embracing being me.
mhm,
Meaning, I was working with a script and I was, you know, presenting the material as best I could. But what I really found they liked was me just playing with them and being purely me. And so that means I think you're wrong and I think you're right at the same time. Right?
Yeah, I mean, but Brett, they love you, right? They love you. I love you. I loved you from the moment I
Oh,
met you because you're warm and kind and charming and incredibly generous, and you feel that when Brad walks into the room, right? And so that makes people love you, and I think that ultimately, like you're not trying to create a room full of people who adore you every day. You walk into that room and you bring you, but you put something else at the center of the room, right? uh
what do
you
you mean?
put
You put something else at the center of the room?
I mean, we don't just clap for Brad. We clap because the way Brad makes us feel, and the way that Brad unites us as a room of people who feel the same way in Brad's
Oh,
presence, right? That's community.
oh, dang it. Am I going to have to backtrack and say you're right
No, I
after I
think
said
we're
you're
both
wrong?
right. I think you're right. I think you're right, right? Because not everybody can do what Brad does. And not everybody can do it the way that Brad does it. So when you come into the room, you spend 45 minutes with your audience, you give them everything that you can give them, and you leave, they feel like they love you, Brad, because they do love you and they love what you gave them. Uh,
I think after all, we're agreeing. So
the same, yeah.
to turn this back on you, by the way, I did love those compliments, but to
Okay.
turn it back on you. All right. So they're coming for the magic, but one of the things they're getting out is just a pure magical experience, that shared moment repeated. But also they're getting a chance to be with you, and you're the Pied Piper creating this experience for them, where they're in community, they're having moments of astonishment.
Right,
But it couldn't have happened without Dennis, and it wouldn't happen to the same degree without someone as good as you.
right. There are the other thing that I think that became a center of the work for me in all the work that I do, corporate, private, magic parlor, online, whatever. Um, the other component of the work that's important and that I think is important to you and your work too, Brad, is that uh, we celebrate the people in the room and we put them at the middle of it. I have worked hard in my show, specifically in the Magic Parlor, to cut anything that is me showing off what I can do magically, right? Um, and to instead only have material in the show that I can hang on the overarching narrative of the show, which is that when you sit down in the seat in my room, you are the magician. It is your thoughts and your choices and your imaginations that make miraculous things happen. And Brad, I'm going to put you center stage and I'm going to let you do that for everybody. It puts you in the middle of it. Now, it is true that I have been doing this 400 shows a year for quite some time, and I am good at it. And I've engineered a situation um, that puts you in the center of it, and that I am the magician in the room. But at the end of the day, every piece of material that's worth a damn in my work hangs on the idea that it couldn't have happened if you had made a different choice, Brad.
Right.
If you had done something different. If Brad hadn't done what Brad did, there would be no magic in this moment. So what we do is we're going to celebrate Brad. Now, we are also celebrating me because I made the whole damn thing happen. But uh, there's a little bit of subterfuge in there going, uh, we're going to celebrate you guys. We're not going to stand here and
Yeah.
celebrate me all night, right? And there are different kinds of magicians who do things differently. And I think that magicians who step on stage owning their power and demonstrating remarkable things can still create real magic for their audience. It's just not the way that I can do it.
Right. Right.
And it's not the way that I can feel good about doing it. But what I can do is feel good about offering people a service. And I think that's a service that makes you feel magical in the middle of a community of people, whether or not they're strangers.
It turns out, my friend Dennis, we totally agree. I remember as a younger speaker being with a more seasoned speaker, and he said to me, "Oh, it's all about the audience." And coming from a background in entertainment, I'm like, "What?" Like I nodded my head dutifully, but I was really thinking, "No, it's not, because if I suck, the show sucks." It's like, right? Is it? I'm in the middle, or I'm the Pied Piper. Let's go. But of course, we were both right, because, like you, I'm at a place now where I'm 56. I'm finally good at this game, and I know that if I come out there being in service to the audience, it's better. If I just think about how I can help the audience, it's better. And that's not where you can't do that when you're in your 20s.
Right. And you know what? Like, you can't, and you don't know that you can do it. You can't do it because you don't know. And I think that um, something came out of pragmatism also in this work, which is that um, I've had many brainstorms of, what we could actually do here is we could do this really rad thing. If what I need is a flash pot and blah blah blah, and some
Yeah.
pyrotechnics and
And a
maybe a
pony,
really big
a
set piece.
pony.
And a pony, probably. But who
Yeah.
wants to travel with a pony? But it's often the same as I'm a sleight of hand performer. I love fancy finger flicking sleights and things that are incredibly hard to do but look really magical. And you know what, Brad? I do them all the time unless I'm actually working.
Yeah.
And when I'm actually working, my work for an audience that paid to see me does not require fancy finger flicking stuff that looks beautiful, because it doesn't work 400 shows a year. There are two to three shows a year where my hands are too sweaty because the AC isn't working and I mess it up. Or there are 2 or 3 shows a year where there's some drunk guy who keeps screaming and I'm only halfway paying attention to that thing because I'm really focused on managing the audience, and I can't do both of those things at the same time.
Right.
And so the sleight of hand dies and we're all done, right? It's the same with the big pieces. The like, we need a flash pot, we need a video to tell this story, we need this to tell this story.
7-foot balloon.
Yeah, what's going to work every time is if I walk in and you hand me a microphone and I hold it. I know that's going to work. I can make it work. And if I can, if I'm working for a corporate client, I'm working 45 minutes at a time. If I can't fill 45 minutes with me and a microphone and things out of my pockets, then I don't have something that I can charge a client $10,000 for, because for anything for $10,000 or more, I better be damn sure it's going to work every single time, whether or not the HDMI cable is too old, right? It doesn't matter. That's not what I'm there to do. And we have to be able to create the experience of wonder and community in whatever room we step into. And I think ultimately that challenge can lead us to a deeper experience of those things.
For me, the takeaway from this interview, which, by the way, I'm going to have to wrap this up because I want to be respectful of your time. The word community is so fun,
right?
You're because we started this conversation talking about, do we need to bring in all the modern digital and electronic tools to hold our audiences at entertainment? And the answer is no, not if you're Dennis. But also, like, what is the value of coming to Dennis's show? And so, yes, it's killer magic and it's stripping away everything, but that shared moment between that instant of astonishment. But I think what attracts me most to the way you're thinking, Dennis, is say you're building a community where people, this wouldn't work alone, right? The audience is part of this. They need to be together. They need to be with you. You need to be with them. It doesn't happen in a vacuum.
It doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it can't happen in a vacuum. You know, the um, when I left college, I moved to Chicago with a group of people to start a theater company. And we called it the House Theater of Chicago. And we called it the House Theater of Chicago because the house is the space that encompasses everyone in the room, the storytellers and the audience. It creates one space for both to experience the story, the community, and the catharsis. That's sort of at the heart and soul of the work from the very beginning. Whether the audience is you and me, or you and me and 1,400 other people, like that is the heart of it. And I think that's what makes it work. I think without that, I mean, frankly, Joss Whedon tells really great stories with his multi-million-dollar budgets, and the story is clearer, more moving, precise, and beautiful to look at on that screen. Like you can see what it looks like when a vampire's teeth grow, right? Like you can, I don't, there's no misdirection that happens there. You can see it. It's
Right.
good. And if we don't create something different than that, which is the experience of me doing that with you, Brad, in the same space, then like we should just resign to the fact that people should watch TV. They should. That stuff is good. We make good stories on TV.
One of the things I like about this podcast, besides the fact that I get to learn more, and besides the fact that I get to have interesting conversations, is it's a chance for me to pepper really interesting people with questions and have an excuse. So really fun to spend more time with you, Dennis Watkins.
Oh my gosh, likewise.
All right, so I can't let you go. I've got two questions. My
Okay.
expertise when I'm in front of my audiences is all about encouragement and acknowledgement and how to deliver social and emotional support on purpose to make people better. Everyone has people who have encouraged them, but not everyone can remember. Sometimes there are little micro encouragements that add up to something worthwhile, or sometimes people really land on you and say, like, Dennis Watkins, you're special. Let me help you to reach your potential. If I say who are your encouragers, who comes to mind?
My mom is the first one.
Aw.
My mom, yeah, right. She's a pretty remarkable human. She passed away about 16 years ago, and uh, she was incredibly supportive of all of her children. She has four sons. All of us are very different, and all of us pursued very different passions. And she was able to support each of one of us in the way that we needed to be supported. You know, I'm a magician, and it's the only job I've ever wanted. And when my mom really understood that that's what I wanted to do, I was pretty young. But instead of doing what a lot of well-meaning parents do, which is to encourage a strong backup plan, and you know, a law degree or something. Instead of doing what a lot of parents do, my mom says, "Well, okay. Well, what do we need to do to make that happen? You need acting lessons, kid. You need to learn how to be on stage and to be comfortable with it. So let's get you acting. Let's start. Let's just do it." Right? And her encouragement and support was huge. And she was able to do that despite some, you know, great personal difficulty doing it. She prioritized supporting her kids over just about anything else. And she and I did not agree on a lot of things. I am a gay man, and she was a fundamentalist Christian. And so there was a lot of conflict and strife there. And even through that, at every step of the way in our journey together, I could feel her support and I could feel her holding me up. That's all she wanted to do. She didn't agree with me, but she wanted to do it. So, I mean, by all, well, the biggest single place that I could say, well, I felt support here was with my parents, both of them, my mother and my father. But you asked for a person, so I just said my mom.
I love that what you said about your mom. She didn't agree with me, but she wanted to support me, and
Yeah,
that
and
second part was enough.
yeah, that's right. That's right. You know, a fundamentalist Christian who's worried about you because you're gay, they're worried about you because they don't want you to spend eternity in hell, not because they don't love you, right? And you know, you just have to assume that she died way too early, and we would have resolved our conflict over
Mm.
time. That's what it takes, and that she died before the journey was over. Um, so, in my mind, a place of conflict and disagreement wasn't the end of her journey. It's just the place where it got cut short, right?
Wow, that is so much more healthy than I would probably be. That sounds.
Uh,
That's
it has taken 16 years, Brad.
that is so much more generous than I think my little mind would be. That right? See, that's the dentist they come to see. All right, here we are at the end. The website is the magicparlorchicago.com. Parlor is spelled old school European with a U. Parlour. Themagicparlorchicago.com. We're talking to Dennis Watkins. Super nice guy. Leads a very successful magic business in a really unique and boutique theater in one of the oldest hotels in America. Dennis Watkins, what gives you hope?
My son gives me hope. I have a 3-year-old son, and I waited until I was 40 to have a kid. I often think, well, I should have done this sooner. This is the best thing I've ever done. It's the most fun I've ever had. I should have been doing it for the last 10 years. But the truth is, seeing the world, it's cliche. It's what every parent discovers, that you have a kid, you get to see the world again. You get to learn the world again. And learning the world again through his eyes is the most hopeful thing I see every day.
Oh, I wish people who are listening to this had a chance to see what I saw, which is your face physically changed when you said your son, just like the sun came out.
It did.
Well, I was with you at that conference in Vegas, and you said, I want a hug from my son.
I got one when I came home. It was great.
Yeah, that's nice. All right, everybody, check out Dennis. I'm going to give you the website one more time. Don't forget themagicparlorchicago.com. Dennis, you're a good guy. I'm so glad we got to disagree, and then it turns out we weren't disagreeing at all. We were right on the same page.
That's right.
Thanks, everybody. Dennis, hold on with me. Everybody, be nice to each other. See you next time.